A White House meeting between Trump and Zelensky falls apart.
What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again.
We'll talk to VOA White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara.
This meeting, which was witnessed by dozens of American and Ukrainian reporters in the Oval Office, was at first cordial. Mostly President Trump spoke and President Zelensky mostly listened. Sometimes his body language seemed visibly uncomfortable, but it was, by all accounts, a completely normal meeting. But around 40 minutes in, when Zelensky raised Russia's 2014 invasion of Crimea, that's when the meeting took a combative tone.
What could this mean for Ukraine, Europe, and the world?
Well, I think right now, European leaders like Macron and Starmer and the incoming German chancellor, they recognize the Russian threat that goes just beyond Ukraine. I think they understand that Putin's ambitions likely do not end with just Ukraine.
Join us now on The Voice of America as we explore the issues in the news.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori London.
And I'm Scott Walterman.
I'm very serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
A White House meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to secure a deal that would allow the U.S. access to Ukrainian rare mineral rights turned into a heated exchange with the two leaders talking over each other.
The first 95% of the meeting was cordial and positive, and then took a sudden turn when U.S. Vice President JD Vance criticized Zelensky, accusing him of engaging in a propaganda tour.
Have you said thank you once this
a
entire
lot of
meeting?
Times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if
you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets.
Let's turn now to our White House Bureau Chief, Patsy Widakuswara, for more information.
Patsy, I've never seen anything like what we saw today in the Oval Office. What happened? How did the meeting devolve?
I've never seen it either, Scott. This meeting, which was witnessed by dozens of American and Ukrainian reporters in the Oval Office, was at first cordial. Mostly President Trump spoke and President Zelensky mostly listened. Sometimes his body language seemed visibly uncomfortable, but it was, by all accounts, a completely normal meeting. But around 40 minutes in, when Zelensky raised Russia's 2014 invasion of Crimea, that's when the meeting took a combative tone, beginning with Vice President JD Vance saying that it was, quote, disrespectful for Zelensky to come to the Oval Office to, quote, try to litigate this in front of the American media. And then Vance just continued to criticize Zelensky. He accused him of engaging in a propaganda tour. And both Vance and Trump also accused Zelensky for not being thankful for the assistance that the country has received from Washington. And, of course, all the other harsh words that you played for our listeners earlier.
So do you have any idea what happened between the time the Oval Office meeting broke up and when Zelensky actually left the White House earlier than expected?
So we don't know for sure. Reporters were ushered out of the Oval Office at 12:23 p.m. and President Zelensky left at 1:41 p.m. So there's about an hour, 20 minutes where he was presumably inside. We don't know what he's doing. But at 1:16 p.m., we learned from President Trump's social media post that the proposed deal is off. President Trump wrote, quote, I have determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. Trump said that Zelensky, quote, disrespected the United States of America and its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. And President Trump also mentioned the fiery nature of the exchange, saying, quote, much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion. I would note also, as you mentioned, Lori, that a scheduled joint press conference was canceled. And after he left, Zelensky took to social media to thank the American public and the president. He said, quote, Ukraine needs just and lasting peace, and we are working exactly for that.
What was this deal supposed to do?
So it would allow the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals in exchange for support in Ukraine's war against Russia's invasion. So it calls for this kind of co-ownership and management of a post-war reconstruction fund for Ukraine, where Ukraine would allocate 50% of future revenues from its natural resources. This is based on the reporting that we have seen so far. Now, President Trump has characterized the deal as a type of a backstop in lieu of security guarantees in which the U.S. would support European peacekeeping forces in Ukraine after the war ends, which is what the Europeans want, France and Britain, for example. And Trump has suggested that with this minerals deal, there will be Americans... And President Trump has suggested that with this minerals deal, there will be Americans in Ukraine, which would serve as a deterrence to Russia. That's why he's calling it a type of a backstop.
So what are you hearing about reaction from world leaders? How are they reacting to all of this?
Depends on the leader, depends on the country. Russian officials obviously cheered it. We saw Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chair of Russia's National Security Council, posting on social media, quote, the insolent pig finally got a proper slapdown in the Oval Office. Hungary's Viktor Orban also congratulated President Trump on what he said was standing bravely for peace. But if we see European officials, including from France, Germany, Finland, the Netherlands, they all voiced support for Ukraine. European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs Kaja Kallas posted on social media, quote, today it became clear that the free world needs a new leader. It's up to us Europeans to take this challenge.
Patsy, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
VOA White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara.
So what could this mean for Ukraine and Europe and, for that matter, the world? Joining us now is former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Steven Pifer, currently an affiliate with the Center for International Security and Cooperation at Stanford.
Thank you for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
This was very unprecedented what happened on Friday with this meeting. Beyond the immediate consequences, what do you think the implications are here?
Well, yes, I think what we saw in the Oval Office on Friday was unprecedented. This is a bad day for Ukraine. It's also a bad day for U.S. national security interests. It's a very good day for Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. And I watched that tape of the Oval Office meeting, and it seems to me that the Vice President JD Vance, who a year ago said he doesn't care at all about Ukraine, he intentionally blew up that meeting. He provoked that fight, which got everything off to such a bad start. And it's difficult to see now how you pick up the pieces following that meeting.
I watched the whole thing, and the first 95% of it is great. They're jovial. President Trump is very upbeat. Zelensky doesn't get a lot of chances to speak, but everything he says is, we're grateful and thank you. And they tussle with the press a little bit, and Trump is having a good time. And then you're right. It appears J.D. Vance sort of throws a hand grenade out, and it goes downhill really fast. I don't understand what happened.
Well, remember 2 weeks ago that Mr. Vance was at the Munich Security Conference, and in his speech did not address, of course, the biggest security issue that Europe now faces was the Russia-Ukraine war, but instead shocked and infuriated Europeans by criticizing European immigration policy and European democracy. I don't know the vice president's role. Is he a professional bomb thrower or what? But I had that same impression, was that the meeting got off to a good start. Certainly things had been positioned well. President Zelensky was prepared to move forward with this resource agreement. The signals coming out of President Trump after his meetings with President Macron of France and Prime Minister Starmer yesterday of the UK were fairly positive. And then, again, this bomb gets thrown and things just spin out of control. The question is going to be now is, can the pieces be picked up? And here, I guess I would look to the people like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Can they try to put this thing back on track? Because I think they understand that at this point, if the United States walks away, the effort to broker a solution is going to be stillborn. And they also, I think, understand that the United States has an interest in Ukraine not being defeated by Russia.
Well, President Trump, right after that, sent out something on his Truth Social that he believed President Zelensky is not really ready for peace if America is involved, and that he can come back when he's ready for peace. I think it was interesting, too, because Zelensky, sort of when the vice president made those comments, it was Zelensky just urging skepticism about Russia's commitment to following through and not necessarily, feeling like he citing Moscow's years of broken commitments. And they really did not like that. They felt like, well, he's always been truthful with us.
Yeah,
that's where. What are we seeing?
Yeah. I cannot imagine anybody who actually wants peace more than Zelensky at this point. I mean, his cities are getting bombed and rocketed by the Russians every night. His people are getting killed every day by Russian military attacks. But he wants a peace that is just and durable. And he has a very valid point about the negotiations that Ukrainians have had with Russians. I mean, it's hard to count all of the agreements that the Russian seizure of Crimea in 2014 and this Russian invasion have broken. Going back to, the Budapest Memorandum, the 1997 Treaty on Friendship, Peace, and Cooperation between Russia and Ukraine. So he's had an experience. Now, I also found it kind of curious where President Trump said that Putin doesn't break deals with me. Well, I'm scratching my head because looking at the last month and looking at the first term of the Trump administration, I don't think Trump had any deals with Putin. But seems to be this, I believe, unfortunately, somewhat naive faith that the president and the vice president have in Vladimir Putin, that Vladimir Zelensky, because of his experience, does not share.
Well, I think in deference to the administration, I think their point was, and Trump said it out loud, we don't know if there's a deal there or not, but let's try to make a deal. Don't you think in that regard, President Zelensky sort of misplayed the moment?
Look, I look at the last 2.5 weeks, and it seems to me that what we've seen coming from President Trump has been concession after concession to Moscow. So 2.5 weeks ago, the president said, Ukraine cannot expect to get all of its territory back. Ukraine can't expect to join NATO. And whether or not that's realistic or unrealistic, why is the American president who wants to broker a solution leaning towards Moscow before the Russians and the Ukrainians have even sat down to negotiate? And so I think when Zelensky came, Zelensky has shown flexibility. He said at the end of last year he was prepared to commit not to use military force to recover occupied territories, but he wanted a NATO security guarantee in return. The Russians, on the other hand, whom President Trump seems so eager to engage, they haven't moved one step. So yesterday, on Thursday, Foreign Minister Lavrov says that in order to settle the war, not only does Zelensky have to accept the loss of all of the land that Russia now occupies, but it has to accept the loss of parts of 3 provinces, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, that the Russian army doesn't even occupy. So to the extent that the president wants to broker, I think in Zelensky he has a partner who is prepared to make some concessions, which will be very painful and very controversial at home. But you have Russia, which has been very recalcitrant and has shown absolutely no give in the last 3 years. Putin says he's prepared to negotiate, but each time he says what it is that he's going to negotiate on, it's Russian terms. And those are not to the capitulation of Ukraine.
After Zelensky left the White House abruptly, he had emergency calls with a number of European leaders, including President Macron and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. What does this astonishing turn of events mean as far as international affairs in Europe and around the globe?
Well, I think right now European leaders like Macron and Starmer and the incoming German Chancellor, they recognize the Russian threat that goes just beyond Ukraine. I think they understand that Putin's ambitions likely do not end with just Ukraine. Unfortunately, I don't believe that President Trump or Vice President Vance understand that. And so this is, I think, going to be now a question. The Europeans are going to have to decide how they can support Ukraine. And one thing that has been pretty clear over the last 5 or 6 months is that Europe is prepared to support Ukraine, even if the United States basically ends its existence. The question that is there, though, is does Europe at this point have the defense industrial capacity to provide what the Ukrainians need? And again, nobody here, I think, wants to extend the war for purposes of extending the war, certainly not Zelensky. But Zelensky is not prepared, understandably, to accept a bad deal. And again, looking at some territorial loss, but he also wants a deal that he doesn't want to sign the deal today and then have 3 years down the road, after Russia has regenerated its military, the Russians attack again.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, happy to help.
Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Steven Pifer, currently an affiliate with the Center for International Security and Cooperation at Stanford. And finally, to put a cap on the day in the story, as he departed the White House for Mar-a-Lago in the U.S. state of Florida, President Trump said Ukrainian President Zelensky overplayed his hand during the contentious Oval Office meeting. Here are comments he made to reporters as he was leaving the White House to board his helicopter to go to Andrews Air Force Base.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great. From his standpoint, I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week. Soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians. And somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody. And we're not doing that. Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and then he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting, and we're not doing that. Not for this country. What? He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay? I can tell you. Did you tell Zelensky to leave the White House? I don't have to tell you that. Go ahead. I think you know the answer to it. What? Wait. Look, I don't trust or distrust anybody. I just want to get a deal done. And if the deal happens, good. But you can't embolden somebody that does not have the cards. And all of a sudden that person says, oh, well, now I can keep fighting. We're not going to keep fighting. You're going to get the war done or let them go and see what happens. Let them fight it out. I want anybody that's going to make peace. If he's capable of making peace, which he may or may not be, but I want somebody that's going to make peace. Again, he doesn't have the cards. When we sign up, he's got all of the cards. That doesn't mean he can fight. He's got to stop the fighting, stop the death. He's losing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's time to stop the death.
U.S. President Donald Trump speaking to reporters on the White House South Lawn. Trump saying again he wants an immediate ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine and warned Zelensky to make peace or lose U.S. support.
You've been listening to Issues in the News.
On behalf of everyone at VOA, thank you so much for listening.
For more news throughout the week, listen to our daily podcast, The Issue, available at voanews.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.
And join us next week for more Issues in the News. Until then, in Washington, I'm Scott Walterman.
And I'm Lori London.